Welcome, everyone, to the Week 16 edition of the Dolphins Make Me Cry podcast. And boy, Dolphin fans, it is finally over. The Dolphins suffered a Monday night defeat that I predicted, 28-15. It wasn't that close. It was really 28-3 to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game that has ramifications really for years to come. The future of Tua, the future of Mike McDaniel, the future of the organization that we will unpack here today. And just as I expected, I think any reasonable Dolphin fan expected, in the big moment, number one, the Dolphins come out and they lay an egg like they always do in prime time, in big spots, in December, in the cold. Just, and the sad thing about that game was, in the first half, the defense came to play. They were flying around. They were hitting Aaron Rodgers. They were hitting guys all over the place. Jordan Brooks is a tackling machine leading the NFL. They're sacking Aaron Rodgers. They're keeping the Steelers' offense, for the most part, in check. And the offense does what it does. It comes out, and actually in the beginning, they did what I actually wanted them to do, which was kind of throw the Steelers off and start to throw it a little bit as they were mixing in the run. And then, of course, on the second drive was the absolute horrendous duck that Tua threw, interception to Waddle, which was just, it had zero shot, and you could just see that was it for the game. You might as well have just ended the game right there. And then I'm going to go one step further. I want to say it was drive 3 or 4 on a 3rd and 1 and a back and forth 3-0 ball game. Typical moronic Mike McDaniel on a 3rd and 1, instead of lining up in some form of a 6th lineman with Brunskill or fullback situation within goal with a running back, Ollie Gordon, behind him. What do they do on 3rd and 1? They run a shotgun with Tua on a handoff that Ollie Gordon gets crushed, 3 to 4 yards in the backfield. If that, my friends, is not a microcosm of what this team is and isn't, I don't know what is. That play, for some reason, just set me off and pissed me off more than anything else, because on the flip side, when you were playing well on defense, the Steelers, what were they doing? Running tush pushes. They were running quarterback sneaks. They were bunching up formations, going for it on 3rd and 4th and 1. And that, my friends, is the problem, or one of, there's many, with the Miami Dolphins. And what's even worse now versus a year ago or 2 years ago is you actually have people and formations you could run to execute to get 1 yard. Now, again, was 1 yard going to be the difference in a 28-3 ball game? It wasn't. But it set a tone. The interception set a tone. That play set a tone. And again, why, when you've actually shown ability in the last month to be able to play a physical brand of football, even if it takes a 6th lineman, a fullback, the coaching staff on the field to block, whatever it takes, they've been doing it. That right there was just check number 1 of issue. Now, check number 2 of issue. Tua Tagovailoa's play. Absolutely atrocious, and it's sad. This is why stats really don't mean jack shit in the NFL a lot of times. He was 22 of 28. If you look at the stat line, he actually had one of the best stat line games that he's had, but it didn't matter. It all happened when it was 28-3. They scored the 2 garbage time touchdowns, meant nothing at the end of the day, padded his stats. And the other thing that pisses you off to no end is, I love how magically you throw to Darren Waller when we're down by 4 scores. And on top of it, getting crushed by Troy Aikman about how they have no sense of urgency and hurry up when you're down literally 4 scores in the 3rd quarter. And then, of course, the last thing I'll say, look, the defense, they're not a perfect defense. They're a pretty well coached, pretty good at times defense. They're figuring stuff out. They can make plays, but let's face facts. They're good. They're not great. But when you give them zero offense and zero complementary football and zero production, zero first downs from the offense, I mean, what do you expect them to do? They're gonna be a sieve eventually. And then the last thing is that flows into, again, in the third quarter. If you look, the Dolphins have been outscored, I think it's like 90-something points in the third quarters of these years. Whereas if you look at every other quarter, they're pretty much right there. No halftime adjustments. That's terrible coaching. There's no other way around it. You do not adjust, and the other team does. And you get your doors blown off in the third quarter. And now the Dolphins are officially out, giving us 3 weeks of meaningless football, 2 of which I will be attending because I'm a diehard fan and I go to every game, and I haven't missed a game in 10 years. I haven't missed a game since I've lived in Florida. So now we have 2 back-to-back home games and then a game in New England that are completely meaningless. Now, that was the game. Then the digestion of the game into the week turned into the big move, which is the benching of Tua Tagovailoa. Literally, I want to say it's 18 months since he signed a $224 million, whatever the exact number was, contract as a franchise quarterback, when myself, people in the media, you can go back and watch podcasts I've done, screamed about the fact that you could have put him on a 5th-year option and you would have paid him $25 to $30 million last year. And if you could go in the crystal ball and you did that, and then he had the concussion issues last year, even if you wrote it with the 1 more year on the 5th year this year, you would be saying bye-bye, owing nothing. But that's not what this clown show organization does. And now they put him on the bench for 7th-round pick Quinn Ewers, who jumps Zach Wilson, who was a number 2 pick on a 1-year contract, $6 million he signed this year, who he's been the backup pretty much every game except Cleveland. He jumps him. So you're wondering who's making the decisions. But what you can pretty much surmise is clear. And I don't know if it's 100%. And I have said that I don't think that they can make that move with the cap hit. And I still don't love it with Tua, because it's literally over 2 years. It's almost $100 million cap hit. It's about $63 million next year and about $36 million the following. It seems, it would appear by the benching, that they are ready to say adios. Now, I have said multiple times, I can see it both sides of the coin, but I lean towards keeping him. Now, again, they did not say anything about injury, and I think that is a key factor in all of this. Personally, and I think anybody who watches him play would say, my children would watch him play and say, yeah, he doesn't look right, and if I showed you tape of him 2 years ago in 2023, 2022, when he was a rookie in 2020, you would say they're 2 completely different people. He's had body changes. He's had multiple hip injuries. He's had multiple concussions. He is not the same player. Period. End of the story. No mobility, no pocket presence, and he used to have the accuracy. He doesn't have that anymore. He literally has very little, next to nothing, and it's limiting what you can do offensively. Then throw in the fact that I think your wide receivers are middling at best. And then, of course, you've obviously gotten a lot out of the run game. So now we make this move to bench him with 3 games left, essentially more than likely, I'm not going to say 100%, but more than likely ending the Tua era, eating $100 million over the next 2 years. Him basically saying, hey, Zach Wilson, we signed you to a 1-year deal. We're not even going to play you because we think you suck, which we knew that going into this. I don't know why this is a big fucking revelation. And then we're going to play Quinn Ewers, 7th-round pick. I don't know what Quinn Ewers is. I'm not going to sit here and act like I watch a ton of college football. He is what he is. He has some ability. I know he's done some stuff in college. He has done, he played fairly well in one of the preseason games. He came in garbage time in Cleveland and threw one nice pass, and then he threw a couple others that he looked like a deer in the headlights. He's a 7th-round pick, okay? Are you going to go in there and kick the tires on it and see what's there? Sure. Do I think there's going to be anything there more than maybe he could potentially be an NFL backup? No, I don't. Because you can count on one hand how many Tom Brady's and Brock Purdy's there are out in the landscape of 7th-round, 5th to 7th-round picks that have been drafted who become legitimately your quote-unquote franchise quarterback. Now, do I think they're in some form of a rock and a hard place? Yes. Do I feel maybe I would have started him this week? I don't know. I get doing it. I get not doing it. But the bottom line is they're doing it. And again, the Tua, and we'll have lots of offseason and plenty of months and months and months to deliberate on, the cutting of him, the post-June 1 cutting of him, what it means for the cap. I mean, the bottom line is it is legitimately irresponsible, even though the NFL salary cap goes up every year and it'll be north of $300 million as we go into next season. It is irresponsible to take, whether he's on the bench for $60 million, which he probably wouldn't be, he would just be cut. I'm sure they'll attempt to trade him. Who in their right mind is taking him? And if anybody did, they're going to you're going to basically pay, 97 cents on the dollar on the contract anyway. And maybe you get a player back. Or maybe he retires. Now, he can't just retire, and he's never going to walk away from $141 million guaranteed. That's for damn sure. But there might be hey, he's there, or he goes somewhere, he goes to a training camp, he gets quote-unquote cut, and then doesn't forfeit the money and goes and rides off into the sunset. And then when you look at the totality of tanking in 2019 to take him, and we're 5 years later, and we've screwed up drafts, we've paid more dollars out than almost any team you could think of, to essentially have one season of 11 wins, 2 seasons of 9 wins, making the playoffs, whatever, call it, 3 playoff road losses. And now you're right back at square one. And then the second reason I've said to not cut him, now again, barring the health, if they legitimately know, and they obviously know in the day in and the day out, hey, he physically can't do it anymore. We can visually see that. But if they feel, hey, we don't think he can physically do it, and what we mean by that is moving forward, we don't think he can physically do it. They're obviously making the right choice in making that decision, and you obviously lean to think that that's what they're doing here. There's just really no other way around it. So you paid this guy to now be an albatross. And it basically, the only thing that looks worse than this is the Deshaun Watson contract. But this one's pretty much damn close. And then the second part of that. Now, again, if they think physically he could heal up, he could get better, he could get some mobility better, he's clearly not going to ever be what he was as a rookie. But if they feel that could happen, and then you're making this move, then you're making an irresponsible move financially, in my opinion. And then the second thing is everybody that wants to get rid of a quarterback, or any player for that matter, they love to tell you who they want to get rid of, but they hate to tell you who they want to replace them with. It happens with coaches. I mean, I call, hey, fire Greer, fire McDaniel. What's the alternative? Is the devil you know better than the devil you don't? And that, my friends, is the problem. Are we going does anybody get excited if I told you that we're getting you, a 30-whatever-year-old Andy Dalton or a Kirk Cousins, or take your pick of journeyman quarterbacks who hold clipboards at this point of their career for a reason, and they're not really going to win you anything. They might come out and have a couple good games, but they're not going to lead the franchise. And it's a shame, from a Tua person perspective. I think Tua is a good human. I think he means well overall. But I will say this. In all of this, he's become very unlikable. And I'm going to throw this out there. And again, I don't think this is the biggest to do. You got him putzing around with Jalen Ramsey, laughing at the end of the game. Does this guy truly care about winning? I hate to question a guy's, what he wants and what he doesn't want. But it's just everything with him and this organization has been bad optically for going on 2 seasons now. There were cracks in the foundation we saw in 2023, and it's literally been downhill, one thing after the other. And I mean, I called this. This isn't an epiphany that this disaster happened, but it's just terrible to think of where we are based on what we put in, the resources we put into this. And now that leads us to these 3 games with Quinn Ewers that we don't know, and anybody who thinks they know doesn't know. You got a rookie who he's basically barely practiced with the first team at all. So if anybody thinks he's going to come out there and light the world on fire, I mean, if he does, it's going to be crazy impressive because you have no chemistry with guys. You don't practice with guys. It's not like you're sitting there as a 3rd string, hell, even a 2nd string, and having that much practice time and working with receivers and running backs and lines and cadences and all of it. There's so many things going on, from the college game to the NFL game. To think this guy is really going to be set up for success, you'd be fooling yourself. So you better get ready and buckle up for some growing pains. And that is exactly what it is. But hey, on the bright side, we're going to be wearing the throwbacks tomorrow. Got my throwback hat. That's exciting. Way to screw that up. It's just, I don't even know what to say anymore. Like, it's so bad. So bad. And you just don't know where they're going. Now, I mean, maybe on one hand you say, all right, you rip the Band-Aid off and they do have a plan of, at least the plan of like, he isn't the answer, which clearly is the case as far as what their, decision-making was here. But then the bigger question is, where do you go with a middling draft pick, a terrible cap situation, not a great roster, decent young players who you're developing, but not enough of them, and, no quarterback. It's literally NFL purgatory in no man's land. When you do not have a quarterback in this league that is in the top at least 10, you have 0 shot of doing anything. You might get lightning in a bottle. You might find some different ways to win. You might have a good running game, and then you got to compensate run game defense. But at the end of the day, to beat big teams in big spots, you need a quarterback who can make big boy throws. Period. There's just no other way around it. And now again, 25 seasons of no playoffs and just horrendous decisions over and over and over. The definition of insanity this organization is. Where do they go from here? I don't know. And it's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, as far as the 3 games go, it's going to be what it's going to be. I wouldn't have very crazy high expectations. I mean, would it shock me if they pulled the Dolphins and, won some of these games? I don't think they're winning all 3. Could they win 1 or 2? Sure. Obviously, you got home games. You got, the Bengals are in no great shakes either. The Bucks, that game, they are playing for the playoffs. It's going to be very interesting. But what you hope to at least see in these games is they're going to obviously play more young players, which, I mean, hell, there's not that many moves they can make of young players that can't play yet anyway that haven't. There's a few. Dante Trader would play more. Zeke Biggers would play more. Obviously, Quinn Ewers, maybe more Ollie Gordon, a little bit less Achane, like stuff like that. But at the end of the day, this team has been playing rookies all year. So, that being said, on a very depressing, it's December, it's almost Christmas, you're out of it with 3 games, with a long offseason, man, a long offseason with a lot of question marks and a hell of a lot more question marks than you're probably going to get answers. So, that being said, Steve Gio's Miami Dolphin pick in the league where they play for pay, even though this game's meaningless. Bengals at Dolphins, which would have been a Sunday night game. It would have been Burrow versus Tua, the draft class clashing. Two teams we thought probably would have been at least in a mix for a wild card. We get flexed out of Sunday Night Football. We're Sunday at 1, which I'm not too mad about. I am mad about the fact that it's meaningless. I'd sign up for 820 if we were playing to get into the playoffs, but the Bengals are favored by 4. Over-under is actually now at, let me see, it's 48, which is a lot, even though the Bengals defense and the Dolphins defense are both not in the greatest of shakes. But my prediction, Quinn Ewers, first NFL start playing Joe Burrow. I think you're going to see an offense that is not going to know what it's doing. I think you're going to lean heavy on the run game, heavy, which you should, to at least set him up for success. But the fact that he has not worked as with number one receivers and he has not built that chemistry, you are going to see issues there. I think you're going to see everything very, very short. But what will happen is you will see a Bengals defense, which is terrible, throw the kitchen sink at this kid, and you're going to see if this kid is going to sink or swim. So my prediction, I think the Bengals will win this game probably 24-13. It's going to be a pretty much ho-hum. You do very little offensively. The defense will do a little bit. Burrow, I bet you, will look like Joe Burrow at moments because he has not. He's had 2 straight games with 2 picks each, and the Bengals are obviously not in the greatest of shakes. However, they do have their wide receiver core. They do have him as a franchise quarterback. They do have some stuff, and I do think they're going to try and want to finish their season strong. And there's no way you're going to get me to believe that Quinn Ewers is coming out off of basically never practicing with first-string players, and he's going to come out and light the world on fire. I don't care if they're playing the worst team in the league. But hopefully I'm wrong. Meaningless football sucks, but at least you want to go out, you want to win the games, and you want to look at that roster and walk away and say, hey, we know we got X, Y, Z that are pieces we can move forward with in these next 3 games. You know, guys that are rookies, guys that you're going to need a lot out of, particularly if you're taking this cap hit with Tua. You're not going to have the money to go out and make big splashes in free agency. So that being said, Merry Christmas to everybody. Let's go Dolphins. We will see you next week as we prepare for another meaningless game against Tampa Bay. Enjoy your Christmas.